Do you remember that sound? The slow, muffled toll of the school bell, breaking through the sleepy morning silence like a sentence. And there you are, standing still, feeling the pressed wool of your uniform harshly rubbing against your legs, the tight knot of the tie pressing on your throat, almost cutting off your breath. The air carries a heavy, familiar smell, floor wax mixed with the faint trace of yesterday's cafeteria lunches and the dust of old, worn-out books. These are not just smells, not just sensations. They are a portal into a world where every step was calculated, every word weighed. A world where even the walls seemed to breathe discipline, where the air itself was filled with expectation. And today, we return there. Back to where order was not a request but a law, and where you learned to stand at attention before taking your very first real step. And if you just felt that cold knot of the tie around your neck, then you stepped into a world where every detail carried meaning. Your clothing was more than just an outfit. It was a reflection of your place, your respect, your obedience to a certain order. You remember how every morning began with preparation, when every element of your appearance was prescribed. From the moment you put on that uniform, you felt part of something greater, something organized, something unified. In that era, in British schools of the 1960s, the image of a student was strictly defined. There was no room for bright personal touches in clothing. There was only the uniform. And it gave shape to the rhythm of the day. You could feel the weight of its fabric, sometimes its slight scratchiness, but you knew, this was your attire, your symbol of belonging to a special world. Skirt length for girls was fixed strictly at the knee, and every inch mattered. Boys' trousers, always pressed, without the slightest crease or careless detail. Collars, spotlessly white, with the faint stiffness of starch, always neat. And the tie, that one element seemed to hold everything together. The knot had to be perfect, tight, centered exactly. Any deviation from the standard was noticed. This was rule number 1. Immaculate uniform, the foundation of appearance, defining your attitude toward the school and toward yourself. Your look was a kind of imprint. It spoke of your neatness, of your attention to detail, of your readiness to fit into the larger order. Every crease, every loose thread, every stray hair was not just a small mistake. It meant you had not fully followed the accepted norms. And everyone could see it. You remember those morning inspections? The teacher's eyes scanning the rows, checking every detail. The focused silence as nails were inspected, as jewelry was forbidden. For girls, no earrings, no rings, no bracelets. Hair neatly tied back, often with a plain ribbon, so no strand could fall across the face. For boys, short hair, no long locks, no free styling. Your appearance had to be as disciplined as your uniform. This was a time when the idea of individuality in clothing merged with the idea of collective order. You did not stand out, you became part of a single canvas. And in that unity, there was a strict kind of harmony. The harmony of uniformity, the harmony of rules. It was part of your path. One of your first lessons, to learn how to belong to a group, before finding your own way. And if you grew up in those years, this is not just history, it is memory. Memory of the weight of the uniform on your shoulders, the smell of freshly pressed fabric, the ritual of dressing each morning in what was less an outfit than a symbol, preparing you for a new day full of rules. It was never just clothing. It was your first step into a world that valued order and predictability. A world that shaped you, step by step, knot by knot, crease by crease. And if your body was bound by the uniform, then your voice was bound by an even stricter rule, the rule of silence. You remember walking into the classroom, and how the noise of the hallway, the hum of voices, seemed to vanish the moment the heavy door closed behind you. Inside, there was silence. Not just the absence of sound, but a deep, almost tangible silence that made you listen to your own breathing, to the beating of your heart. Every whisper, every creak of a chair seemed loud enough to be heard down the corridor. This was rule number 2. No talking during lessons. None, without permission, and even then, only a quiet, thoughtful answer. The classroom was not just a room. It was a temple of knowledge, and you were its silent parishioner. Your place was at your desk, your posture flawless. Hands behind your back, sit up straight, elbows off the desk. These commands were not just words. They were part of the ritual that shaped your physical discipline, your respect for the space and for learning itself. You could feel your back stiffen, your muscles adapting to this strict geometry of the body. Any fidgeting, any movement, was noticed immediately. The invisible eye of the teacher seemed to hang over each of you. The teacher, that word carried weight and authority. The teacher was unquestionable. The teacher is always right. It was not spoken aloud every day, but it was in the air, an unspoken law. His word was final. Your task was to listen, to absorb, to obey. Not to ask unnecessary questions, not to argue, not to show initiative unless it was explicitly allowed. Do you remember his gaze? Calm, yet piercing, making you feel completely transparent. Even the way you wrote mattered. Do you remember how the ink spread across the paper if you held the pen wrong? Or how the teacher walked between the rows, carefully checking every notebook? Rule number 3 was clear. Perfect handwriting and clean notebooks. Calligraphy was more than a skill. It was a reflection of your patience, your diligence, your respect for the process of learning. No blots, no messy lines. Every letter had to be written with care, every paragraph beginning with a red margin, every title underlined with a perfectly straight line. The constant tension of keeping silent, the fear of making a mistake that would be noticed, the absolute authority of the adult, all this created a unique atmosphere. Perhaps today it seems restrictive, oppressive. But back then, it was part of learning not only subjects, but self-control, attentiveness, respect for elders and for knowledge itself. It was a lesson in patience and focus. And if you grew up in those years, this is not history, it is memory. The memory of your own whispering soul in the absolute silence of the classroom, of the cold evenness of the pages waiting for your neat handwriting, of the invisible pressure of order that shaped not only your knowledge but your character. You learned to listen, not only to the teacher, but to yourself, in that enveloping silence where every sound was an event. But even when the tension of the lesson faded, the invisible hand of discipline never let you go. Because even play had its rules, and freedom of movement was only an illusion. You remember how the hallways seemed to free you from the walls of the classroom, yet every step there, too, was prescribed. No running, only a quick, measured walk. Always on the right side, as if an invisible line split the space into lanes of traffic. You felt your legs fall into that rhythm, into this unspoken ballet where everyone moved along their own trajectory. And the queues. Oh, those endless queues. At the classroom door, at the cafeteria, at the cloakroom. Always straight, without pushing, without chatter. You stood there, feeling the warmth of the back in front of you, realizing you were just part of a long chain, each one waiting for their turn. This was rule number 4. Strict order in the corridors and on the stairs, where every step was part of a larger flow, a collective movement. And the breaks, they gave you a moment to breathe, but only within limits. You stepped into the yard, and the air felt lighter, yet even there was no room for reckless freedom. No distractions, no gadgets, your leisure was simple, traditional, confined to the strict bounds of the schoolyard. Jump rope, hopscotch, simple games of tag, all under the watchful eyes of teachers who patrolled the grounds like invisible guardians of order. You felt their gaze, even when you didn't look at them, aware that even here, in open space, you were being observed. Laughter existed, but it was restrained. Noise existed, but it was subdued. It was a dance on schedule. Even when you thought you were dancing freely, you were moving to an unspoken rhythm. And then, the second bell rang, calling you to the cafeteria. The smell of food, so familiar, yet even that did not break the order. You remember entering the dining hall, where the noise that could have been simply wasn't. Here reigned rule number 5, meals in complete silence. Eating was not just eating. It was another lesson, a lesson in manners, a lesson in neatness. No talking at the table, no unnecessary movement. You ate with focus, listening to the whispers of forks and spoons, the faint clinking of dishes. You felt yourself becoming accustomed to this silence, as it became part of you. part of your self-control. Even on the way to or from school, your behavior was regulated. No shouting, no games on the street, no detours from the straight path home. You were a representative of your school, and your image had to remain impeccable, always and everywhere, because you carried its name. This constant sense that even your freedom of movement and expression was under control shaped something in you. Perhaps it taught you to value those rare moments when you could be truly free. Or perhaps it taught you to find that freedom within yourself, even inside strict rules. And if you grew up in those years, this is not history, it is memory. Memory of structured time, of controlled rest, of how even play had its unspoken yet unbreakable rules. It was a world where every moment was part of a great, ordered mechanism, preparing you for a life where order was valued above all else. But what happened when that perfect fabric of order was torn? Then it was not requests, not persuasion, it was the cold, firm hand of consequences. You remember that feeling, when everything inside you tightened at the realization that you had crossed the line. It was more than the expectation of a reprimand. It was the expectation of the inevitable. Sometimes it was relatively mild. Hours spent standing in the corner, facing the wall, feeling the stares of your classmates burning into your back, even if you couldn't see them. Or the hundreds of lines you wrote out in small, careful handwriting, until your fingers cramped and the ink stained your skin with its bitter smell. Your eyes grew heavy with fatigue, but you knew you had to finish. Each letter, each word was not just punishment, but a lesson. Sometimes you had to stay after class, doing some dull but necessary chore, cleaning the room, polishing desks, the smell of cleaning fluid mixing with the scent of old wood on your hands. This was rule number 7, public censure for misconduct. It taught you responsibility to the collective, showing that every violation had consequences not only for you, but for everyone. Your name could appear on the blackboard, the list of offenders on public display. A mark, temporary but heavy. A reminder to you, and to everyone, that you had stumbled. And, of course, there was unfinished homework. If you remember that era, you know it was a serious offense. This was rule number 8. Any failure to complete homework must be punished. No excuses. No I forgot. Only accountability for your duties. And consequences always followed, whether those same endless lines, or something more severe. And then there was discipline of an entirely different kind. You remember how your heart froze when you were called to the headmaster's office, or when the teacher, with a face showing nothing but firm resolve, slowly picked up the wooden ruler. This was rule number 6, corporal punishment for serious violations. You may not have seen violence displayed openly, but you felt it. You felt the cold wood, the sharp sting across your palm, the searing instant of pain that faded quickly but left a long, aching reminder. Unfair, you might say. Perhaps. But it was part of a system that believed in the power of direct impact, to forge character, to hammer into you an understanding of limits and consequences. That feeling of helplessness before authority, the knowledge that every mistake carried an unavoidable price, it shaped not only your behavior, but your inner world. You learned to take the blow, to accept the consequences, understanding that in this world your actions had direct, tangible results. And if you grew up in those years, this is not history, it is memory. Memory of the sting in your hand, of the smell of ink from endless lines, of the fear of punishment becoming part of your day, but also teaching you resilience. It was a world where discipline was not debated, it simply existed. And it shaped you, making you stronger, harder, ready for any trial. So, we have walked this path. From the perfectly pressed uniform to the sting of the ruler. From the absolute silence of the classroom to the strict rules of recess, where even play had its boundaries. But what was the result of this relentless shaping of young souls? What was the purpose of such unwavering strictness, this constant pressure, this discipline that filled every moment of your day? This system did more than teach you multiplication and grammar. It forged your character. You learned resilience, because failure was inevitable, but rising again was mandatory. You learned responsibility, because every misstep carried clear and tangible consequences. And you absorbed respect, for teachers, for elders, for order itself. Their word was not advice, but law, one you obeyed without question. This was rule number 9. Complete obedience to the teacher's decision, leaving no space for doubt or debate. The teacher was the captain of the ship, and you were the crew, trusting him to lead you through any storm. In your world, in that Britain of the 1960s, there was no such idea as freedom of self-expression in the sense we know today. Instead, you were taught restraint, the art of keeping a straight face, the discipline of controlling your emotions and desires. You were being prepared for a life that would not always be easy, a life where hardship was certain, and where the ability to stand at attention, to submit, to be reliable, was valued above all. You felt how that strictness, like an invisible spine, ran through you, making you stronger. It was not a lesson in cruelty, but in survival and strength of spirit. And above it all loomed rule number 10, respect for elders, for teachers, for headmasters, above all else. It was the unshakable foundation on which that entire world rested. You felt even your voice grow softer when speaking to them, your eyes lowering in silent respect. Today the world is different. Methods of education have changed, priorities have shifted, and you see the results everywhere. But if you grew up in those years, this is not history, it is memory. The memory of a world that was strict, but fair. A world where discipline was not a burden, but a path to shaping your character. A world where every school day was a step on the staircase to adulthood, where every lesson, even punishment, carried meaning. It was not just a set of rules, not just a school. It was an entire world. A world where discipline was the foundation, and character the highest value. A world that once felt eternal, unshakable, but a world we have lost. And now, looking back, each of us must decide, what did we gain by leaving it behind, and what did we lose forever, behind the closed doors of that old, strict, unforgettable British school? If these memories echoed in your soul, if you felt again the scent of floor wax and the pull of a tie against your neck, then stay with us. Keep these memories alive, so they remain not just history, but part of our shared remembrance. Join those who still carry this world within them, so together we can keep its echo alive.